So the two things that we're primarily focused on with our clients is stockouts and surplus. It comes down to, do we have the right amount of inventory in the right locations, or have we developed excess? And we recognize that that inventory is utilized to help us maintain our customer satisfaction. We run into stockout issues, surpluses, we have an opportunity to lose customers, lose sales, and ultimately it lowers margins. So our big focus with our clients is ensuring that they have the right amount of product at the right location. The focus being in that we understand that it's very challenging to lose customers that you've worked so hard to gain. So our focus in here is to say, let's position the inventory in the right locations. On the other hand, we don't want to put too much of a burden on the overall organization, so we're just right sizing it from the standpoint that we understand that too much inventory really crushes cash, and then that lack of visibility into where inventory resides, things like that, they really will impact an organization's ability to move forward. So our design and focus coming out in the market was really to provide visibility with tools and expertise. So it's a three-pronged approach. One, if you know what you need to be looking at, you have that visibility that's provided within StockIQ, it's going to be much easier to address the issues and the problems. The tools that are set out in place are specifically developed for distributors and manufacturers. And I will tell you, we work with a lot of different ranges from a revenue perspective. Our clients, we've got some clients in the early stages of their market development doing 10 million in annual revenue. We have clients that are over $1 billion in annual revenue as well. Our sweet spot is squarely in the mid-market. I'd say 25 to 250 million in annual revenue is really where we're working. And we find that that marketplace really works well with the expertise that we bring into the marketplace. We also understand that when we come in and we begin working with prospective clients, that it's really challenging for people to make decisions and decide which direction to move. And we've done a lot of analysis on this, but at the end of the day, we believe that competing priorities really makes adoption of a new application very, very difficult. There's a lot of hesitation to moving forward with so many different priorities. We also understand that implementations can be very painful. Not every solution is designed to implement quickly and/or has a good methodology around it. So we'll share a little bit of our response to that. And then lastly, I think another huge one is just the fear of being stuck with something that wasn't the right fit. These are three primary things that we find within our prospective base that lengthen sales cycles, that prevent people from making a decision. So our overall focus in the marketplace is to address those concerns. So ease of use really helps with clients getting on board quickly. You'll see that when we get into the demonstration. There's an adoption phase, which is once I get the implementation moving and training completed, how long does that take and how easy is that? So we have some methodologies that we have developed. I'm happy to share those with you and kind of talk down through them. And then lastly, that adaptation perspective, which is our application is flexible enough to be able to, for instance, bring in external data files. There's a big focus in the marketplace right now with point of sale or sell-through type data so that they can get a better handle on what's going on in the marketplace. Maybe opening up to the point where I'm actually having to develop a forecast for 3 or 4 different channels for the same SKU. So we have the ability to adapt to those types of changes. Ease of use, we find that an intuitive interface is very instrumental in helping people adapt and adopt the application. The adoption, we offer a 28-day promise. The whole focus here is to get people into the application and running quickly. Now, I will tell you, just like anything, there's a few caveats on this, which is we need to be prepared to move into an implementation instead of discovering things midway. So what we do is we work with our clients on the front end on identifying those things that can potentially hamper a 28-day implementation. And then that adaptation, we have playbooks that guide the implementations and also the use of the application. So our whole focus out in here is to leverage that experience across our team and the expertise that they bring in to really help people adapt quickly. Our mission, it's making it easy for our clients to plan, forecast, and replenish inventory. And my hope is that you see that in the demonstration when we get moving forward as well. The other differentiating component in here as well is we are with our clients in our pricing. We actually include unlimited maintenance and support. We really like staying in touch with our clientele. And part of that is assisting them as they're moving throughout their supply chain journey. So we become an extension of their supply chain planning team, and we find that that's truly a differentiating feature in the marketplace. Okay, so let's go into StockIQ. So this is StockIQ's application. It is a web-based application. We have the ability to integrate with all of the Dynamics product lines and others. And essentially what we are doing is we're utilizing the information that's maintained in GP or NAV or Business Central as the master data source. So how StockIQ is operating is we are extracting a series of files from the various systems using different methodologies based on the system that we're integrating with, and we're importing those on a periodic basis. Most of our clients are refreshing data once per day, sometimes twice per day. And that really consists of going out and grabbing all of your item information, looking at all open purchase orders or orders, your last sales history. We're looking at the vendors, all of that information that is key for helping us going about sizing and generating replenishment suggestions. So within the web-based application, we can be on-prem, we can be hosted in the cloud. StockIQ can host for our clients, or if they have a hosting co-location facility, it can be conducted there as well. By the way, you'll look over here on the left-hand side. This is what we call our navigation bar. This is providing access to the various modules in the application. But let me actually take you through a little bit of a rhythm within StockIQ and talk about how we interact with the ERP. One other note in here as well is we have the ability to integrate with multiple data sources. In this global world that we're residing in right now, a lot of our clients may have instances where they have a company operating in Europe on NAV. They might be running Business Central here in the States or vice versa, different things like that. So with that said, we are going to pull this information in, and we are going to go about doing three primary things for our clientele. Now, the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to come in and we're going to take a look at what historical sales have been. This is a summary of historical sales for a particular SKU, for a particular stocking location, down to a specific forecast group. Now, I bring up forecast group from the standpoint that this allows us to do omni-channel forecasting. So we might have a client that has a brick and mortar. They might be selling into big box. They might also have an e-com channel as well. So we can actually forecast each of those independently, aggregate the overall total demand down together so that we're forecasting for all channels. And this is a big deal when it gets down to one of the primary challenges that a lot of our clients are facing today. So with that said, we are going to take that sales history. That sales history is coming directly from the ERP, and it's the invoice information. So it's information that says, what have I sold out over the last month and in what quantities? We will also record in there what the on-hand balance was. What this helps us do is it helps us determine whether or not we were in a stocked out period. So for instance, if we were stocked out for a span of a week or 2 weeks, we actually have the ability to estimate lost sales for our clients. So this information then is used to help us generate a forward-looking forecast. Forward-looking forecasts consist of looking at trend. Is our demand going up, going down, staying flat? It also includes looking at seasonality. So if we have a product out there that has a seasonal profile, we'll pick up on that. We'll incorporate it into the statistical algorithm when we're projecting that out over the trend. So this is a representation of what we think we will be selling of this product in that specific forecast group. You'll also notice that we've incorporated a promotion. So promotions are quite consistent with our clientele or special events, maybe new store openings or door openings. What this allows us to do is discreetly put these events in, and identify what we think the demand will be so that we can generate an accurate plan for what we think we're going to be selling. So the beautiful thing about this is it's recorded, we're planning to it, and as it moves back in history, we remove it from the sales history so that we get down to a baseline of usage. Let me actually highlight a particular item over here. You'll notice that there's a number of these events that have either been removing sales from the history and or removing promotional type activity that occurred. And again, normalizing the sales history is our overall goal and focus. So one last thing in here that we're going to incorporate into that forecast moving forward is we're also going to incorporate what we call a consensus forecast. Consensus forecast allows us to come out and say, well, that's great, but the statistics really aren't on track for this particular client. Maybe something's going on in the marketplace that will influence how much sales we have. So we provide this operational forecast to provide clients with the ability to say, you know what, we think demand is going to be 25% higher, for instance, over this period. Let's go ahead and apply that, and we will replenish to that new level. So this is where the collaboration comes in, where you can collaborate with the sales force, account managers, to best reflect and incorporate that information that's not maintained in sales history. So with this information then, we now have a plan for generating a forecast. The other thing that we're going to measure on this forecast is our forecast error. The forecast error is essentially how much error, how far off do we think we're going to be in our predictions. This is really instrumental in helping us determine how much safety stock to put in place. Manufacturers will safety stock finished goods, they'll safety stock, put buffer stock in for raw materials. Distributors do the same thing to maintain service levels. So one of the things that we're doing in StockIQ is we're coming forward and we're assigning a default service objective based on the overall goal of the organization. And this is all about saying, I have some items that will be more important than others. So in this overall view out in here, when we talk about service level, which is a key component of safety stock, we're going through and we're working with our clients on distributing items between an A, B, C, D class, for instance, these being the most important, meaning they're generating more sales, more hits, maybe more quantity sold, more revenue, things like that. We're also dimensioning them on another dimension as well to speak directly to their behavior as an item. You may have heard an item as runners, repeaters, and strangers. Runners basically are repeating demand, it's consistent. Repeaters, strangers, for instance, are, hey, we get sales on them, but they're not real predictable, they're sporadic. And then we have those items that fall over here in the low demand categories. So this is really instrumental for helping us determine how we want to stock. So we know that our A items that are our bread and butter are going to be maintaining higher service level goals is our objective, and we're going to be putting consequentially more inventory in place to support that. So this grid is really instrumental for us in helping determine how we have arrived at that target service objective. By the way, looking at a target service objective of 98% is essentially saying we're willing to be out of stock on this product once per year. So with this information, with the lead time to replenish, knowing what the demand at the lead time is for this particular product and the forecast error, we can develop a safety stock level. Now, in the systems, when you're working within GP, for instance, a methodology used for replenishment might be a min-max. You can equate safety stock to the minimum level of inventory that we're willing to carry on a particular item. So for instance, on here, we've identified that we need 22 units of stock. We can also see that that equates to about 2.5 days of working supply, or $486. So we're calculating that for all of our clients. We're doing it every day. We will also calculate it into the future. And part of the reason when we talk about calculating it into the future is if we're in a seasonal product or seasonal profile, demand will change as we're moving out into the future. This little chart right in here speaks directly to where our safety stock and our inventory positions will be at any point in time in the future. So you can see out here during this big seasonal spike, we're going to be carrying more safety stock. It bumped from 22 to 30 units. our maximum that we're willing to carry also goes up as well, as compared to an area down in here where we're in a lower period of seasonality. We don't want to carry that much inventory. So this is how we help our clients automatically maintain the parameters that they use for replenishment, for finely tuning both to meet those two objectives that we talked about on the front end: minimizing stockouts and minimizing excess inventory. We've created that ideal bound in here. So with that information then, the other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be generating a replenishment schedule for that item. Now this item, when we talk about getting a replenishment, it might be directly from a vendor. It might be from another warehouse within the organization. So a lot of our clientele are operating with multiple DCs, maybe one of them being a hub where all of the other satellite DCs get their product from. The other supplier may be an internal manufacturing or assembly. So when we talk about generating a replenishment schedule, it might be for generating a purchase order, a transfer coming in from another site, and or a work order or a manufacturing order. And the way that those are expressed is in our replenishment grid here. So I'm going to bring this up. We'll kind of show you what this looks like. This is a summarization of all sources of demand. And by the way, as we're looking at this, this would be today, and we're showing this schedule moving forward on a day-by-day basis. But what we're doing is we're summarizing all open customer orders or back orders, that forecast that we just generated. We then look at anything that's currently on order. So looking at open supply, if our vendors, or if we're buying anything from our vendors, we're going to be pulling that in. We'll show the date and the quantity that it's scheduled to be received. Skip over for the planned orders for a moment. We're going to go into the projected inventory. The projected inventory is about calculating where we expect our inventory to be at the end of that particular period. You'll notice that we're driving down inventory, and as a result, what we're trying to do is we're trying to schedule a replenish right before we actually reach that safety stock level. Safety stock level is 22 units. We're going to generate a replenishment before it drops down to that level. And again, we're generating that replenishment level all the way out for the entire planning horizon. Most of our clients are doing that for about a year. Now, with this information then, the planner is then presented with a place orders, or this is a wizard that helps them identify what needs to be ordered. So the whole exercise of generating the forecast, generating the safety stock levels, looking at everything that's on order, is really to come out and say, when do we next need to replenish inventory and in what levels? So using the place orders, the individual planner has visibility to all of those three types of replenishment suggestions. For instance, out in here, if I'm bringing up a manufacturer, it's indicating that I need to launch some work orders, potentially to build the stock. If, for instance, it's another warehouse, it's indicating that I need to initiate a transfer of product from one warehouse to another. Or in the case of a vendor, it's basically indicating it's time to generate a replenishment to that vendor. Now in this vendor, it's triggering me and saying you need to purchase 14 items. There's, by the way, you buy a total of 155 from that vendor. Within that vendor, here's our overall total order cost. And there's a few things that we need to pay attention to. We have a couple of items that are actually dropping down below what we call a panic point, when people start freaking out when the inventory gets too low, and then 10 of those items are dropping down below our safety stock. So we need to address this. We need to launch an order. This wizard is a 6-step wizard. Step number 2 is where most of the activity occurs. But essentially, when we're looking at what needs to be planned and what needs to be purchased, StockIQ is bringing forth a lot of information to help the planners evaluate if they need to. So for instance, on this first item out in here, suggested order quantity of 247 units, and you can see my planning lead time, and there's a whole host of other information that can be included in this grid, including weight and cube. So one of the things that we do for our clients is we help them maximize the logistics and minimize cost by upsizing to a full container, for instance. As I was talking about, there's a lot of information that can be included in this grid for helping make decisions on what needs to be purchased. Now, I have a view in here that I have set up that I like using that includes the information that I use consistently. This is one of the things that we encourage our clients work on, which is, hey, we would really like to see you go forward, set up that ideal view that's consistent so you have the information that you're using to evaluate whether that order quantity is correct or not. Now, in this, we're also going to provide visibility to the details around this product. So for instance, how many do we have on order? And you can click into these and identify this information. By the way, this is information that's coming directly from the ERP system. So we know when it's scheduled to arrive, whether it's a transfer, whether it's a PO. We also can look at the forecast. So there's a quick view out here to say, oh, I see the forecast on this. I now know why we're recommending an order quantity of 247, a couple of activities going on out in the future that I need to plan for, and it looks like demand is rising. We also have the ability to get at that schedule, so you can see everything that's currently on order. Ultimately, the planner makes a decision whether they like those quantities or not. If they don't like them, they can change them. They can change them here, they can change them on the details sheet, but note in all of that that we are going to record when that has been changed. By the way, one other thing, and I don't see one available here, but if product is available, for instance, in another warehouse, we will provide visibility to inventory in that other site on whether it's excess or not, with the whole goal and intent of minimizing the overall total investment in inventory and making sure that we're not overstocking. Okay, so let's see what other information I have to share with you here. We're going to follow through on this order cycle, and we're going to complete that cycle for you here. So we've selected the items that we want to purchase. We're going to go through and we're going to confirm or deny that they have information that may create excess, or maybe they're missing some information on the PO. We then have the ability to route this through workflow, or we can automatically approve the order. Now, in our cycle in working with the ERP, if it has been approved, we are automatically going to assign it an order number, and when we click on place order, this is going to publish it back into the ERP. So once the PO, the transfer, the work order has been released, essentially all maintenance occurs on that PO or that order after that. And then what StockIQ does is that, okay, we see that a quantity has been increased, a date's been changed. We pull that in during the next refresh. We get an open list of all the open supply orders, and we go about doing the planning over again. Now, in that overall cycle, there's also the ability to launch a refresh of information as well. So if, for instance, we're doing some simulation, maybe we've made some adjustments to our forecast, we can come through and we can say, okay, let's import a fresh set of data, and it'll recalculate when we do that full refresh. This is what our clients are utilizing to help establish that demand plan and the replenishment plan and any of those inventory parameters. Now, there is a lot of information that's presented within StockIQ to help visibility and provide decision making. So visibility to alerts, for instance. This is where we're getting into saying, okay, first thing in the morning, my primary activities is to make sure that I am visible and aware of anything that may create a stock out. Maybe it's a plan or a manufacturing assembly where I don't have enough of the raw materials in order to create them. Maybe it's my demand for the month is particularly high, much greater than what I anticipated. I can go out and I can look at those alerts. We also provide alerts related to inventory, late orders, sales of customer alerts where we're running into back orders. So again, providing that visibility through alerts, through dashboards, which allow us to look at, understand where our inventory positions are, is really key and important. We also provide an executive level summary. So as much as our tool has been developed for the end level user, we also cater a lot to our CEOs and providing CEOs and CFOs and COOs, which is, let me give you a high level visibility as to what's going on in your supply chain. What is the status of your inventory, right? Where does it exist? And allows them to drive down into further details. The other information that we're providing out here as well gets into information around reports on our stockouts, on our performance of our overall inventory. So you'll notice over in here, there's a lot of reporting that's available and accessible around our inventory, around KPIs for performance, If we're in food and beverage, we also provide information around inventory expiration and then also optimization of our inventory. So if we're trying to make decisions on whether we invest more or not, this allows us to go through and perform that analysis. And in any of these grids, like we talked before, there's information that can be included directly in here to help discern or filter out that information that we don't want to see. In here, once we have our view set, the individual user has the ability to save that view. Another thing to note is StockIQ is licensed with unlimited number of user licenses, so people are not paying for people to come in and look at reporting or the sales force, etc. It also, we provide security around roles and responsibilities, so we can provide a view only if necessary. Bottom line is we find that a lot of our clients spend a lot of time providing information to other areas in the organization around demand and supply. Let's see here. Forecasting, number of different things in forecasting, importing external forecast and events and promotions. Purchasing, we provide reporting around inventory balancing. We can present a report of all planned purchases by individual vendor. On the supply side, we're calculating a vendor's performance and calculating lead times. We find that this is quite helpful, particularly these days when a vendor is not performing based on what their quoted lead times are. So we analyze all the receipts coming in from that vendor, identify whether they're late or on time, and then we utilize this information for calculating an individual lead time for product. Where we get really sophisticated is monitoring all aspects of lead time, being able to remove those outliers, but calculate an expected planned lead time. We're also providing information to sales around sales and margin analysis, customer analysis. We'll also get into promotion planning. So for our clients in the food and beverage industries where there's a lot of promotions, we can actually calculate price slip curves, etc. We focused very heavily on a real visual approach to our planning, and we find that this is quite effective. We still provide the numbers. There are people out there that like seeing numbers. For instance, when the sales forecast brings in and people feed the forecast that direction, but it's also quite helpful when displayed and being able to see and compare that to what we're thinking is going to happen. Another feature here that's quite helpful for our clientele these days was a hierarchical approach to forecasting. By the way, this is a very advanced forecasting methodology, but essentially what we're doing is we're taking all of those individual SKUs and we're aggregating them up into a product family, for instance. So I can look at an individual SKU's forecast, but I might have a subcategory of product that I need to see what my overall total demand is coming in at. This allows me to look at that. It also allows me to aggregate that up into higher levels. We can also come forward and make changes at this aggregate level and propagate them down to all of the lower level SKUs as well. So this is a full-blown top-down, bottom-up, middle-out forecasting tool. Has a lot of sophistication that you'll only find in Tier 1 solutions. But the thing that gets them is that long lead time in importing product, because you're having to plan demand so far out in the future, which is really requiring a demand plan. So when we bring in information around unit weight, cubes, different things like that, we have the ability to take them through the order wizard and it'll optimize their order. So they can come out and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be importing in a 40 high. How do I want to load the container? But basically what it's doing is it's making suggestions on what else needs to be added to that container in order to optimize the transportation. By the way, this is a big deal feature for a lot of folks because we find that most people identify what they want to order, then they take it out to a spreadsheet to calculate how much can go in the container, have they exceeded it so that they can maximize that, and thus starts a cycle. So this really saves a lot of time for folks. Well, very good, everybody. I certainly thank you for your time today. Appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you.